I'm so grateful for Stacy, who's going to take over for me with the Q&A and sort of keep things running smoothly. But I had to be here because I have waited, I think, literally years at this point for our Brazilian guests to join us for a session. So I'm so excited about that. Please bear in mind that they are doing us a favor by speaking English. So if you please would just go slowly and, use common words. I think that would be very helpful for them. And they will let us know if they need any help. Certainly no embarrassment in that. If you could keep your mic off, if you're not actively speaking, that'll help those of us who have an auditory processing challenge. And I think the format will be that they will present and then Stacy will run the Q&A for us. So with that, I am excited to turn it over.
That's our part now, is it? So I think we are just going to quickly introduce ourselves. And then we wrote a text and an introduction of what Traduzir-se project is and our parts, our aims, what we do. So for us, it's better to read than to speak like that. And then we are going to introduce ourselves and our research today, what we do individually, because today we are kind of a network, a Traduzir-se network. It's got, we have more than 50 autistic people in a WhatsApp group. So it's really bigger than we imagined at first. Well, I speak a lot. Gustavo speaks very little. We are very different, so I'm trying not to monopolize the meeting. I'm Valéria Aydos. I am a 52 years old woman, white woman with curly hair and long. I live in south of Brazil, have a daughter. I'm an anthropologist, and I teach medical anthropology and bioethics and human rights for med students. So in a medicine university, and I teach these humanistic components to them. So maybe guys with you.
So yeah, I can just jump in. My name is Luana Adriano. I am a human rights lawyer, and I'm also a law professor at the Institute of Regional and Urban Planning and Research at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. I'm also a research fellow at the Public Policy Program, postgraduate program at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys and to get to know you more. We are very excited to be able to have this conversation, so thank you.
Hello, my name is Luis Henrique. I'm gonna present myself briefly. I'm 42 years old, and I work as a researcher in the field of language studies, mainly within applied linguistics. I'm autistic, and I was diagnosed as an adult when I was already teaching at the present university, where I still work, the Universidade Federal dos Vales do Jequitinhonha e Mucuri. I've been researching autism with a focus on issues of language since 2019.
Can you hear me? No? And now? Can you hear?
Yeah.
It's a little low, but we can hear you.
Tá baixinho.
And now? It's enough? Okay. My name is Gustavo Rickert. I am an autistic person diagnosed in adulthood. I am a writer, poet, professor, and researcher in the field of literature at Federal University of Pelotas in southern Brazil, near the border with Uruguay. I am very excited with this experience, and so that's it.
Do you want me to read, Luana? Yeah.
No, it's fine. I mean, I can just introduce a bit of the project if you want. That would be fine by me. And then we plan to give you a little bit of context of what we have been researching nowadays, because the experience with the project, the Traduzir-se project, has been the period of the greatest work of it was between 2020 and 2023. So between the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2023, the project was developed. The name is Traduzir-se. That means translating oneself in the first person during academic practice. It was a project run especially by Luiz Henrique and by Gustavo at the Federal University of Jequitinhonha, of Vale do Jequitinhonha e do Mucuri. So this is a smaller, more peripheral university in the Brazilian context. It's located in Diamantina, a region which had a lot of mining during colonial times. So the state of it, it's Minas Gerais. It began with a very simple, I guess, but ambitious goal, which was to map autism studies, the state of art of autism studies in Brazil. And from that, a study group emerged, which was a space that we could meet regularly to read, to think. And so we ended up organizing this growing body of knowledge in a moment in which neurodiversity or autism studies these were fields which were not very yet developed, and we had access to, due to English knowledge, to all of this production in the global north. And I guess now the state of art is quite different, because we have more and more people talking about autism and decolonial studies in Brazil, especially from the point of view of social sciences. But at that time, that was not the case. And pandemics, of course, was sort of a facilitator for that, because we started meeting online. And over time, I guess something quite beautiful happened, because the group started to attract people specifically who were not yet inserted in the academia, but wanted to be in postgraduate projects. So we ended up not only studying autism, I think, but also transforming the lives of people who wanted to go into academia. And also, one of the things that we ended up concluding is that the knowledge of English, if I guess you don't know, but it's something that which is required here, so you can be approved in a postgraduate program. In fact, one language, you have to learn another language, foreign language, which is not Portuguese, but English ends up being the most required one. And this was a very tough obstacle for autistic people to get included in academia, the knowledge of another language, a foreign language. So what started at this university ended up with the support of the organization that I'm a part of. I'm a legal counselor of this organization. The name is the Brazilian Association for the Rights of Autistic People, Abraça. I have been a member of it for the past 13 years now, and I'm a legal counselor of it now. And we all, I guess, are involved in this institution. So we gradually, we ended up growing a network involving 4 universities. So besides the Federal University of Jequitinhonha and Mucuri Valley, we also had a university, Development University of the state of Santa Catarina, the Federal University of Pelotas, Unipampa, which is the University of Valéria, and also my university now, I guess, because at that time, when the project started, I was still a PhD student. I was in Germany, actually, because I had a joint degree between Rio University and Westfalisch Wilhelmsmünster. So we ended up having this very broad project, which was not only in academia, but also in civil society. And another project, social project, which was very involved was Vidas Negras com Deficiência Importam, which the translation is Black Lives with Disability Matters. And these were like the social groups, which were more social movements, which were in partnership with Traduzir-se and all of these different universities. I guess we could say that we had people from all the regions in Brazil. And now we have this really huge group of people, a network, matter of fact. So just to maybe summarize what happened there, I guess we were trying to question this idea that there is only one right way to speak, to write, to think in academia. We felt that these manners of speaking, of behaving oneself in academia, did not attend the demands of neurodivergent people. We have this, of course, this assumption that language is never neutral. So it's also embodied in political and collective perspectives. So something that we do together in context, that is language. In that sense, accessibility would not only be about ramps, digital tools, as we all know. It would be more like an ethos, so an ethical practice or a framework, which stood up for a way of being open to difference. And yeah, that's it. So we try to move the focus away from the idea of deficit, the idea of disability in a sense of impairment, and instead look at how academic norms, and especially unsaid norms, they produce exclusion. So we started to work with the ideas of interdependence, care ethics. Crip time was very important because I guess we all here have somewhat of a crip time orientation in our life. So these conversations, they used to happen like once every 2 weeks. And after the internal conversations, we also had once a month a broader one, which was made in cycles of different subjects. So neurodiversity, crip time, sexuality, decoloniality. And we made these conversations available. These were open. These were transmitted in YouTube, especially at that time, and in YouTube of Abraça, the association that I mentioned. And now we are in different parts of our lives, I guess. So people like me, I was still a PhD student, and I now have a position at the university, which is quite great. And also, I guess Gustavo was in another university. Luis Henrique still is the coordinator of the project in his university, and Valéria also coordinated it, and she entered in the Federal University of Pampa, where she is now. So what we wanted to show you guys is that this, which started as an academic project, became something much broader and became this locus for insertion of autistic people in academia, when this was yet a very impossible thing to think about in Brazil. And many people, we haven't done the math, but we believe that many people who were there and who got in touch with postgraduate programs through the project now are in postgraduate projects, now are presenting their PhD thesis, their master's dissertation. So that for us is a great accomplishment. And we still have the seeds of those moments. They still wrote in us. They grow in us each and every day. And I guess we should introduce to you guys how we have been dealing now with the legacy of Traduzir-se as a project and now as a network. So as I just spoke for like a lot, we should make the make the round there. So I guess Valeria could tell us a bit more about her recent developments since Traduzice became this network. That would be great.
Thank you, Luana. So I think she is the youngest, and she's got the best English. That's thank you very much, Luana. I had a small blank here. Blank, you call it like okay. I'd like to add that before I read this small presentation about myself, I'd like to add that Traduzir-se was not only a work group. We made many friends. It's plenty of affection. We felt so close to each other since the beginning. And I think I've never been so welcome in a place than I am with these all neurodivergent people. um, I'm not diagnosed, but I had a tumor in my brain in the middle of the pandemic. While I was going into, I was meeting Traduzir-se, and then these people, they were very important at that time because I had kind of sequelas. It was in the local front. And then now my memory is different. I do things in a different time. And well, I've never had so much feel through people. I've always, well, I was overshared person since I I know myself, so I think we have a lot in common. Uh, and well, that's what I'd like to add because it's a place where we can be ourselves and we don't have to follow the etiquetas, the way of being that is expected in an academia. For example, Rita was always playing video game while we were discussing uh, dense and difficult texts, and this is the way she could pay attention on it, and it was very important to us during pandemic to have this space. I think it was very important. And one more thing is that our WhatsApp group was welcoming many people with were being diagnosed when they were adult. So we always could share experiences and kind of literate in autistic ways of dealing with barriers and these violences of the day by day, especially inside academia. And we always, and everyone who wanted to go into a master's or PhD, we could read together the project, we could training for the interview. So we were kind of being a place of interdependence in the way we understand in disability studies, yeah? Like autistic people and allies together, learning how to live, how to survive actually in academia. Well, as I told you, I don't know if it was everybody here, I'm Valéria. I'm an anthropologist, and I teach in a university in south of Brazil, so it's very closer to the Spanish accent. Maybe that's why you can see the differences in our accent. It's the border with Argentina. So first of all, I'd like to thank Professor Pamela Bloch. She is one of the first people abroad that studied disability in Brazil, and she's always together with us. She gives us a lot of support and open doors for the world. So she was the one who told me, Valeria, I think you would like to be a part of CASY. So I invited everybody. And I always would like to and she's part of my research now today is with Professor Pamela Bloch and Professor Marivete Gesser from Santa Catarina. So we have an interinstitutional project today about the educational trajectories of Black autistic women in academia, especially trying to map the main barriers, the main difficulties they have to keep inside the university and to finish their studies, but also trying to understand the strategies of survival of these people. So in the day by day of my university, I've been there for 4 years, and I'm part of all the commissions that you can imagine. So I am the one uh, who with a lot of people, more people, think about the curriculum, work on accessibility, analyze the documents for people who go inside the university from the quotas program. So we have laws here that reserve, that have a part of the places in university for people with disability. And I'm already in the end of my text, and I didn't read. That's terrible. I always do that. So I entered in the field of anthropology of disability and critical autism studies in 2013 when I conducted an ethnography on the inclusion of autistic people in the labor market through the quota law in Brazil. Here, all private companies with more than 100 employees are required to hire proportionally from 2 to 5% of people with disabilities. Since then, I've met people from Traduzir-se, and I have been working in dialogue with Luana, Henrique, and Gustavo on writing, study meetings, and outreach activities such as live streams and other projects. So, as Luana said, we are all members of Abraça, an association of the rights of autistic people. And we have these huge WhatsApp groups that every day we are in touch. So currently I'm working with Professor Pamela and Marivete in this project I told you. And my contribution is made through conducting an ethnography within the daily life of the university where I teach, and through dialogue with 15 in-depth interviews about the trajectories of Black disability women in Brazil. I have been considering how social analysis of disability, and specifically autism, present themselves as a promising field to understand in Brazil as a country where the achievements of citizenship are directly linked to the legal framework and technologies of implementing public policies. I think, I don't know in the rest of the world, I don't know much about it, but I think here the concept of disability is completely linked with legal concepts like the social model or our Brazilian laws of for people with disability. So I think it's a very legally conducted country. And in Brazil, for example, you only have inclusion advances when it's a law and when its law is fiscalized. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So we had the quota program legally official in the 90s and in the early 90s, and we only started to include people with disability in the 20s, 200 on. So it's what I tried to understand in my PhD through the experience of one guy with disability in his first job. So all the cycle of public policy, I went together with him. I went to the courses, and then I went inside his first job in the in the business empresa. Fugiu. I don't remember now. And I try to understand the day by day of himself and how he built his new subjectivity while he was considered a worker, which is also very important in Brazil in terms of identity. So to give you a context, in the last of my research now, in the academia, in the last 20 years, access to higher education in Brazil was undergone a remarkable expansion and diversification. Particularly important is in this process are affirmative action policies originally designed as racial and social terms, which have gained much momentum since 1916, when we had a law to incorporate people with disabilities as subjects of reserved places in federal public educational institutions in Brazil. However, despite the advances achieved with the framework in the Brazilian inclusion law, the scenario of inclusion of people with disabilities in Brazilian higher education is still one of incipient presence of this segment of the population and high dropout rates, especially among people affected by gender and race markers. In combating this reality, while social technologies of inclusion and accessibility are institutionally produced, it's also noticeable how much individualistic, productivist, and meritocratic logic of neoliberalism permeates the law adherence of the academic community to equitable and inclusive pedagogical practice. In this context, I specifically seek to make visible the agency, as Saba Mahmoud understands it, of autistic people in creating strategies of permanence and produce features in institutional ableism and institutional violence that individualize the social markers of difference and produce access fatigue, as Conrad understands it, hindering the production of a politically situated identity in the struggle for rights. So Mia Mingus has helped me to understand this articulation of people, political articulation of people inside academia. In particular, in dialogue with Anima Rimol, I propose to understand these strategies of autistic Black women in terms of care, in the same sense that it is the practice, in the sense that is the practice and values of interdependence built in the daily life of the brotherhood among excluded people that is built through shared experiences of intersectional violence. I think we can see inside the day-by-day university the create of coalizations like Andalzua understands it, that is helping this network of affection. I think it's the main thing that is helping people, autistic people, to deal with university. I also noticed the presence of actions that James Scott calls everyday micro-resistances in the fight against institutional ableism and intersectional violence that would lead these women to exclusion. In the daily productive-driven world of academia, it's impossible to keep up with so many demands. When the system is unfair and violent, Brazilians tend to circumvent, to burlar, we say, the rules. So in the so-called jeitinho brasileiro, or Brazilian way of dealing with life, we can notice these people like one does the mathematic essay and the other one does the Portuguese essay. I also see in my students that they tend to do the subjects like they do at they have this person of accessibility always with them. Yeah. So if one of them cannot go to the class, the other person tells them what happened, or for example, me, I am a kind of agenda of my students. So I always remember them, the tasks in the day, and with some um, frequency. I go individually to kick them in the WhatsApp when they don't do the some kind of activity. Of course, it's a strategy, but I think it's showing us the institutional ableism that it's impossible to keep up. Yeah, so instead of have an accessibility in institutional officially way, yeah, that is possible for everyone to deal with the university, we have to individualize this job. So it is what we Nicholas Rose and many other people that work with that think about new liberalism, a kind of self-made man obligation. Yes, we are individualizing the state obligations all the time. So it's more or less like that, and I think it's very promising to think about accessibility and these resistance strategies in the framework of care. So that's what I'm thinking, and I spoke too much. So I don't know who's going to talk now.
It's the two gentlemen. Do you want me to pick?
Uh, I
Okay.
can you, Gustavo? Or,
It can be.
okay.
Okay. Thank you. I want to start with a poem. This poem is by Flavia Neves, an autistic Brazilian woman. So that's it. Sometimes I don't stop. I speak, 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 speak. I jump, 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 jump. I recite, 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 recite. I spin, 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 spin. I palpitate, 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 palpitate. You get irritated, call me a weird animal, asks me to be quiet, and you don't understand anything I say. I try to be very succinct. Have you ever thought about how to shake up the creative when the imagination tickles the dendrites? I started with this poem because poetry, autism, and the research group Traduzir-se are strongly related in my story. I was diagnosed with autism in 2020. All the medical documents I read about autism spoke of autism language as a language lacking meaning, lacking metaphors, lacking context, lacking feelings, lacking central coherence, and the list could go on for hours. I have called this list and its perverse effects on autistic people by the concept of taxonomy of absence. At the time of my diagnosis in 2020, I was a colleague of Luiz Henrique Magnani at the Federal University of Vales do Jequitinhonha em Mucuri, in Minas Gerais. Mayani accompanied my diagnostic process and became a great friend. We shared a concern about the taxonomy of absences. If we were writers, professors, and researchers in the field of language, how could our language be characterized by lack? From this concern, Mayani had the idea of creating the Traduzir-se group to bring together researchers in the humanities and think critically about the relationship between language and autism. If the doctors gave me the formal diagnosis, the Traduzir-se group prescribed me an autistic literacy program. In the group, I discovered authors like Elizabeth Fine, Clarice Hills, Remy Yorgeau, Julia Rodas, Amanda Beggs, Ralph James Savarese, and Amanda Ketté. Also Valéria Aydos and Luana Adriano, who became research partners and are here now. Since then, I have combined the studies of Traduzir-se with my field of study, literature, and more specifically, poetry. I had already read great autistic poets like Tito Mukopede, Birger Selling, among others. But what about in Brazil? Who are the autistic poets today? That's how I started a project, a research project called Spinning Words, Autistic Poetry in Motion, which sought to understand and disseminate the poetic production of autistic people in Brazil. Some of these poets, like Flávia Neves and Ana Cândida Carvalho, were our colleagues in the Traduzir-se group. I have been sharing some studies with these poets in which we show how autistic traits such as echolalia, hyperfocus, attention to detail, synesthesia, and steams are often present in their poems. It's possible to consider an autistic aesthetic and ethic in these poems. It is through the freedom of form and rhythm in poetry that these autistic individuals feel comfortable to writing in the way they think. Some of these results can be read in the US in a book edited by Christy Collin and Saul Lemeron. The book is called Divergent Writers, Disability, Illness, Neurodivergence, and Ableism in Creative Writing, and is currently available for pre-order from Bloomsbury. I am also finishing my third book of poems. It is called Diagnóstico Médico Descritivo, in English, Descriptive Medical Diagnosis, and is scheduled for publication in Brazil in 2026. One of its poems can be seen in the most recent issue of Disability Studies Quarterly, and it's called It's Impossible. Finally, I conclude by saying that the poetry of autistic people from Brazil has shown me that our language is not lacking, but overflows with perceptions and meanings. As Flavia's poem says, while prejudice calls us animals, we express ourselves and imagination tackles our identities. Perhaps our imagination can tackle society too. I believe in this, and that is why I study and share the autistic poetry of my country. Thank you very much.
Okay, people, now I'm going to continue, and I will try to bring here some things that I started to think and develop after this big project, the translate ourselves. And I'm gonna read. Our shared experience brought together autistic and non-autistic people, neurodivergent and neurotypical participants. I think that what made it special was that most voices in the collective were autistic or neurodivergent, and their rhythms of thought and conversation were taken seriously. That changed the rhythm and the social dynamics of the collective in very concrete ways. This experience raised to me deep questions about how we do research and how we exist while researching. It was also another move to challenge ideas of neutrality and objectivity that the university often assumes. Looking back, I see that this process opened a path for me to think about what it means to research while being to let my own neurodivergent experience take part in the way I understand and produce knowledge. Questions about quick time, productivity, and social skills needed to maintain the networks that were already part of my life have increasingly taken shape as academic concerns, as I've come to understand autism more deeply as a structural issue that challenges my very permanence as a researcher and worker. Later, I found that Thais Silveira, a Brazilian researcher, had used the term researching being altogether to describe something similar, which helped me give a name to what I was trying to do. I had always valued subjective and narrative approaches, but this experience helped me make them a more intentional part of my academic work. Within that process, I designed a short autoethnography studies with Valéria as an initial step to reflect on accessibility, ableism, and exclusion in the university, while also pointing myself as a researcher who could engage more deeply with methods grounded in personal and subjective experience. This 3-month study, supervised by Valéria, helped shape my next project that's called Neurodiversity in School and University. The goal was to create spaces to listen to and get to know how autistic people make sense of living with divergent bodies in typical contexts, especially in spaces of knowledge production, such as school and universities. Building on those reflections, I developed a cycle of 10 collective conversations titled Divergent Corporealities, Typical Interfaces. I understand the interface here as this set of protocols, open or hidden rules, and practices that sustain social relations, and through them, the very functioning of institutions. These were not formal interviews, but kind of dialogues, moments to discuss what this person wants to share around that theme. Most of the participants are autistic researchers themselves, reflecting on how their bodies, perceptions, and ways of thinking interact with institutional expectation in academia. All 10 conversations have been recorded and now are being transcribed. The plan is to publish them as a book, not as commentary about research, but as research itself, cared by those who live its tension and possibilities. Even with these small advances, what I perceive with this history is that moving to academia is still extremely difficult. Ableism remains deeply institutional, shaping what can be said by whom and under what conditions. Our initiatives often take in the form of small resistance, limited yet necessary gestures to keep the conversation open and to insist that these presences matter. And that's it, my part. Thank you.
I love the way you said, that's it. That was a lot and it was really good.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let those who may not be able to check out the chat know that there are some great links to the writings that Valeria shared. And I'm just looking through for questions, but if anyone has questions, we have a nice intimate group so you can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. I actually have a question about the linguistics component. So I'm just going to throw it out there and then you guys can figure out who can respond. Valeria?
No, I think Luana didn't talk about her.
Oh, no.
That's fine.
No, it's
I thought all
it's
four.
because
I
she talked
apologize.
before, and then maybe you thought it was
Yes,
together,
I
but
did.
she was
I did.
always introducing the group.
No, I'm going to mute myself and hold my.
That's also fine because actually I'm the most boring one regarding what I'm studying right now because I'm a lawyer. So there is a limit of how fun my research can be. But I guess right now I've been engaged in the study of social rights since I've started studying law, specifically right to education, hence the proximity initially to disability. Now I am a member of the National Committee of Special Education in the perspective of inclusive education. And we help to consolidate the politics, which is now enforced in Brazil, just recently enforced. And it's been quite attacked by the far right, because far right in Brazil supports segregated education. So there are lots of links between the extreme far right and segregated education in Brazil. In my research fellowship, I've been engaged in the idea of autistic identity, specifically autistic identity within legal theory and political science. So I've been focusing on, for example, autistic political representation, whether that is done directly or by proxy, which is mostly the case. And this takes places not only in state institutions such as the parliament, but also in civil society organizations and across media platforms, I would say, it's like such as Instagram, TikTok, that could be also framed as political representation in the public arena, in a broad perspective of public arena. If I had to summarize a set of questions that have been moving my research, I would describe it as an effort to untangle what I've been calling the biolegitimacy knot in Brazil. This borrows from a Brazilian urban thinker. She's called Hermínia Maricato. The concept that she uses is earth knot. So she uses this to describe how territorial inequalities lie sort of at the root of all social issues in Brazil because of our colonial past. For me, the biolegitimacy knot is something quite similar to that, because there is a dense entanglement here between life, legitimacy, and biogovernance, which is in the root of disability questions, public policy questions in Brazil. This knot has many faces, I would say, but two are my main focus: biolegal subjectivity and biopolitical representation. So in the legal field, we've been discussing concepts of sort of very used and known concepts of biosociality, biological citizenship, but not in law theory, not in legal theory. These concepts are not very known in legal theory. So what constitutes the subject of disability rights? And usually that's the medical diagnosis. Specifically for autism, that's very much the case. And even though we've been talking about the social model, neurodiversity amongst critical thinkers, for law, I guess we are very far away from discussing the fact that the medical diagnosis may not be needed for access to rights. And in the political field, I guess the key question is the issue of autistic legitimacy. That's a very contested subject. So we have some international discussions about partial representation due to the fact that it is said that autistic people with lesser demands of support end up representing autism itself. And we know who are the usual suspects arguing that. And that, for me, that relates a lot with the idea of Spivak in the fact that autistics in usual they cannot represent themselves, they cannot speak, because either they are too autistic to be politically competent or too politically competent to be autistic. So in the end, they cannot represent themselves at all as autistic vis-a-vis autistic people. This is a sort of what Luis Henrique and Gustavo, who could have been saying double prohibition of autism. And I guess, yeah, I mean, the last papers I've written, one is about atypical motherhood. That's a very specific Brazilian issue. I mean, Brazilian mothers of autistic persons, they claim to be subject of rights themselves due to the caretaker position that they hold. Not only that, but they claim to have a representation over autism. That's worldwide, I guess, but the idea, the category of maternidade atípica, atypical motherhood, that doesn't exist anywhere else. I've done my research on that, and I guess that's very interesting. And also it touches upon other subjects, such as the fact that when we speak about motherhood and autism, we often don't think about autistic women who became mothers. And we also don't think about the mothers who got their autistic identification during the process of mothering an autistic person. That's one of the things that interests me a lot. Another one, and also the narratives, I mean, these are three axes of it, the narratives surrounding the mother's fault on causing the autism. So I guess there are a lot of things to untangle there. The other one is the autism transgenderism nexus. So there has been sort of this very mystical statistics, such as autistics are 6 times more likely, 7 times more likely, 4.3 times more likely not to be hetero-cis normative. And I found out that the person who first came up with this association is also Simon Baron-Cohen. And I guess I wanted to check out how these statistics survive, how they came to be. And they're very pathological, reductionist in general, even though they are used by autistic people to ask for to demand for services, specific services and political representation. So I guess there is another biolegitimacy problem there. And of course, there is the third thing which I've been researching, which is the political use of autism by far-right movements. So in Brazil, if we compare the number of times that autism have been cited, quoted in the parliament this year, to the times that has been quoted last year, just this year, we had the double of mentions so far. And the three political parties which mention mostly autism are far-right parties. One of them is Bolsonaro's party. And there are many things to sort of untangle there also, but I would not say that the left here is also mentioning autism in a way that is remotely like what we understand of autism. So also there is a misunderstanding with how the left has been using politically mentioning autism. And I guess that's it. I've been calling this idea of legitimacy through autism also a sort of biocracy, because it relates to what a sociologist, Raimundo Faoro, called here estamento burocrático, which is these people who are not really in institutions, but they very much influence political institutions because they have intimate relations to them. And this is the case here. We have a category of not only physicians, but mothers of autistics who have been through this very particular legitimacy influencing how we talk about disability rights. And a sign of that is that the last time we had the demographic counting of the population, the category in which they fixated to count disabled people with disabilities, was autism and disability. And so I guess I also have been arguing that there is this sort of political and epistemic filter through which we all have to deal with autism beforehand, before dealing with disability, with public policy and disability. This has many implications in the market of autism, which I would not be able to mention here, but applied behavior analysis, inclusion and health coverage. And anyways, I mean, I have been very interested in those topics. They're a bit more boring because they deal with legal theory and political theory, but I guess that's the legacy of also traduzir-se in myself, because I would not be thinking about these things was it not for how the project made me think about space of legitimation, but also space of resistance. So I would not approach legal theory and political theory was it not for traduzir-se making me rethink the epistemic position of autism, the political and epistemic position of autism, and how we architected the notion of legal subjectivehood and political representation. I guess that's it.
That was not boring. It's very insightful. I would like to say, Luana, I do appreciate you said something that I've not heard anyone else say, and I think it all the time, about the sort of the mother and the whole dynamic around the martyr mom, and it's, you know, my responsibility. I will say that from my perspective as a speech therapist that's worked in the schools for many, many, many years, parents of autistic children are treated significantly different than other parents of other disabilities. Whether it's an evaluation, whether it's an IEP, there is a negative connotation when the parents walk in the room. when they go to the school to register and they say their child's autistic, the parents are immediately treated different. So I think part of that is why that sort of, oh my gosh, it's all about me, right? Because I'm trying to get my child into school or whatever they're trying to get. But it is a problem. It is a huge problem. No other disability, and I've worked with a lot of disabilities, no other parents are treated the way autistic parents are treated. It's very sad, very sad. Yeah. Thank you. That was good. All right, let me check for questions. I think if anybody has questions, I think we're at time, but we have a couple of minutes if anybody has anything to say or add or ask. And I will thank you, Valeria, for cueing me. That was my ingrained American looking at the time. I do not manage my time well, but I have a mother that does. So I'm always trying to be conscious of other people and making sure that I'm not just being lackadaisy. This was good. Anyone
Actually,
have
I have
anything?
something that's certainly been on my mind for a very long time, and I think that when we're in these spaces, the presumption, and I think it's an accurate presumption, is people are interested in um, doing the right thing. They're interested in things like fairness, equality, justice. These are sort of core values and principles that in this space, I think I could probably say with some confidence, like 100 people, 100% of the people probably share that. And a lot of the things that we talk about certainly sort of make sense to one another. And the way we say it, sort of speaking to that sort of shared way of being and cultural cohesion across borders and languages. My concern really is that the systems that we're speaking about, outside of these communities, in the way they operate, question whether or not they have the same core values and operate on the same principles. So I think I see some head shaking around here, but I think we all know the answer to that. So in order to sort of compel change, I find this to be extremely challenging, because if people are more vested in their own interests, or they're not thinking so much about these principles of sort of equality, fairness, then how do you compel them to change a system that they benefit from? So what is there any way to intrinsically sort of motivate them rather than trying? I mean, there's a lot of discussion, and the optics of it is very much that people try to create programs and they'll say a bunch of stuff that sounds really good, but it's very political, so there's always this discrepancy between what people say and what they actually do. But I guess from a very sort of basic standpoint, if that is sort of the core thinking and value system, then it's hard to see that other than just the optics, and the flowery language, that there's any true intent to change a system that the people in control, in power, have benefited from. And I like these discussions. They're very insightful. But this is always something that's sort of in the back of my head, so how do we sort of square these things? And certainly someone would probably get a Nobel Peace Prize if they had the answer. But I think it'd be fun to talk about.
I put in the comments I find that it's just based on priorities. You know, if I think of education, I think of education as a space for children to learn in a nurturing environment. That's not what the education system is focused on. So my priority for what should be happening is not how it was designed to be. So that's the struggle, is the system has a different outcome than what we are looking for as people who respect human beings. They're not looking at that as a priority. And that's the disconcerting part of how do you change and make people simply care? How do you do that? And when you find out, let me know, because I've been working on it for about 35 years. It's, unfortunately, we all know people change when it impacts them, which that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's just me. So that is a struggle, and that's a whole, we should have a roundtable for that discussion. But it's about priorities, and you said motivation. The motivation for, if I think of one school or one class or one university, their motivation may be test scores up to get more funding, more research done so we can get more of this. They're not looking at the people. They're not. And then I will, I know I'm a little wordy, but I will share that I learned this lesson at the very hard way when I did foster care. And I was all about the children. And the foster care people took the children from me and said I was doing too much. That's not what I was supposed to be doing. All you're supposed to do is keep them safe, and that's it. And I was like, oh, I thought it was about the whole child. They were like, nope, this is all you have to do. Yeah. So, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. We just have to keep doing it. Yeah, it's not empathy. Yes, you're right. Yes. Yeah.
I just would like to add to give you an idea. I think we have all this discourse, global discourse about the world today is diverse. So the society should be able to include all kinds of bodies, sensitivities, timing, etc. But in the day by day of my university, that's not the discourse, not even the discourse. What I listen every day is this person cannot be a doctor. So when we are in the school for children, the focus is the education. We have parts of the school with psychological professions, pedagogical professions. When we go to university, it disappears. It looks like we don't have to think about education anymore. We are there to produce a professional of that area. So my job inside the university is to it's to acolher, to bring together the students with disability, and we do a kind of pact. So my university was the first one to sign the Pact for Neurodiversity, which was produced by Abraça. I think Luana was in the writing this program. Is that to make the neurodiversity a trans-interinstitutional subject in the paper. But when it gives me tools, yeah, to go to the meetings that with the doctors that are saying that this student cannot be a doctor, and then it gives me tools to say, well, the university now has signed this pact. In Brazil, we have this law, and I'm sorry, but you do have to teach them because this is the place where we arrive. Because in the day by day, I receive WhatsApp of students crying every day, having meltdowns, having shutdowns. Not only autistic people, but more the autistic people and more Black women that they listen every day. Oh, I thought you were a nursery student. I don't think you were a doctor. And this is racism.
Mhm.
So what I think Traduzir-se taught me with Rita Louzeiro, Luciana, Luciana, help me, people, from is that
Viegas.
this
Luciana
is
Viegas.
Viegas, this intersectional embodying experience. Yeah, it's like if you were in a crossroads, you are having shots from everywhere, you don't know where they are coming from. And when you are autistic, you really don't know where they are coming from many times. So they do not understand why it's happening. So what we are doing, we learn from Traduzir-se that we have to put on words, we do have to produce social technologies inside universities that are very, very, very detailed. Yeah, so when you arrive at the university, there is the site, you have to go there. No one is going to tell you that you have to look for a professor, otherwise you won't have a scholarship, how to do that. So all these manhas, Luiz Henrique, is always joking with it. I am a PhD, but I don't have the manhas. It's like I don't have the jeitinho. I cannot read the known sad things. So that's what I'm doing in my university. I go to the first class and I say, well, this is the game. The game here is like that. Yeah, so let's survive together. And if someone is not paying attention, if someone is not dealing with being inside here, they can go. We are in a safe space, something like that.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is that no, we don't share the same values, even in this course. Because where I am, at least, they do not agree. Yeah, and then one day I had to say to a colleague, well, if this student cannot be a doctor because you are saying he's not good at soft skills, I'm saying you cannot be a doctor because you cannot lead with people. Because you are so rude. You wouldn't be able. So I'm going to put in your diploma a footnote, because that's what they say. You should put in a footnote, this student cannot be a surgeon. This student cannot be whatever, a kind of doctor that has to lead with emergency all the time. Well, he can be a physiology, he can be a gynecology, he can be a psychiatrist. He can have a very structured professional life. So we have to think about what they call here perfil do egresso. It's like a profile that you are needed to have this, and this to graduate in some profession. We have to go to the end to think about the process. So that's what we are working on here at Unipampa. And also especially about autistic people, this homogeneous organization culture that is easier to deal with. They say we are in a new era, that the diversity thinks better. They say this neuroliberal profile of worker, but in the day by day, we are still in the Ford and Taylor kind of a world organization. Yeah, so what I think Ian Hacking and Rosenberg helped me to realize that specifically for autistic people in the labor market, they are considered a dangerous category. They are considered a dangerous subjectivity because of the impressibility. You cannot predict what's going to happen.
Unpredictability.
So in their discourse, I don't know how to deal with it because I cannot predict the tools for this kind of management. So, but they say we have to deal with flexibility all the time. So they are not. They are rigidly think about the organization, and
Yes.
they have rigid think about education, and
Yep,
they say autistic people have it.
I know. It's backwards. I think Luana had something to share.
Yes, just so if I mean, I'm really learning with you guys. If I could add my 2 cents to this conversation, and if I well understood what I believe brought to the table,
Mhm.
I guess we do have sort of a political split between what autism has been being framed as and disability policy. That's in education, that's in health, that's in everywhere area. And it has to do both with priorities and also with different constructions of sites of recognition and struggle. Because I believe that at least in Brazil, that's the only place I can really talk about. The broader disability movement has emerged historically from grassroots organizations. They're rooted in collective resistance and social transformation. They have been, since the beginning, in their own way, trying to understand some sort of rethinking of, I don't know, social contract, let's say. Autism politics, in contrast, I believe it's more fragmented. So in many cases, autism politics is more co-opted by medical and therapeutical frameworks because autism has been so strongly defined through psychiatry and diagnosis and intervention. It's one of the few areas within disability that can still maintain this appearance of neutrality or a very medicalized narrative. Like I always mention regarding the legal framework, I always mention that the autism law in Brazil was approved 4 years before the disability law. And the autism law just took 1 year to be written, and the disability law took over 20 years to be written. So there is also the matter that I believe we should take it seriously, reclaiming autism politics through its radical potential, because I don't think we always share the same values. So I think we should reclaim autism politics as a site to contest what's normal, what's capable, what's predictable, even what's human, and even what's considered to be a normal range of functioning, or even to dismiss the whole idea of normal functioning. And that's my biggest concern right now with this whole far right approximation to autism, which is not only through, I don't know, figures like subjects such as Elon Musk, but it also has deep roots in how we have been structuring resources in Brazil. So these resources, they have been focusing in, they have been priority being allocated to a very specific notion of what counts, what should be autism. And that's very, for me, that's very particularly, since I come from the disability movement, that's very worrisome. So I guess, yeah, I would add that.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to finish with Dawn.
Yes, I think, we talk about different values, and I think it's important to really wrap our minds around the fact that we actually experience reality in a different way, because the values that you act upon, that you really believe in, have to do with how you really see reality. It comes down to that basic thing that we're essentially living in two completely different worlds. And there's a lot of, I loved how much this was brought up today, how much projection happens, that we're, social idiots or whatever, when the opposite is clearly true, or the inflexibility. I mean, look at the state of the world being driven into the ditch. Like, nobody's at the steering wheel. They can't change. Like, anyway, I get passionate about this. And so with that passion, I would just say, I am so happy about what you are doing. It very much complements what we're doing here. Cooperation over competition, the tribe, the village. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to all the presenters and your language efforts. Now I feel like I need to go practice my Spanish. I will end this by sharing with you, Luana, when you mentioned about the functionality and how people make that a big deal, and Valeria said the same thing about who can be a doctor. So when I am in a meeting and we're talking about a child not having access because their functionality or whatever it is somebody comes up with, I often will say to the group, well, I know about 3 women that are married to men that can't seem to do anything, and they're not autistic. So let's try to give these kids a chance to maybe show what they can do. And that's just to prove to them their disability has nothing to do with what they can do. And not having a disability doesn't mean you're going to be. There are lots of people still living in their parents' basement that are not disabled. So that's my little pet peeve on cutting short the abilities of our neurodivergent individuals. Thank you all so much for making my Monday start off really well. Thank you.